Now, the President recently unveiled plans to fix Eskom's problems and resolve the electricity challenge in the country. Lots of money is going to Eskom. Now, this is because almost every one of us is learning to live in the dark. Power utility Eskom is unable to meet the electricity demands of this country, and consumers are now anxious as to what will happen in the ever-cold winter months. Now, the past summer, the grid was under a lot of strain. How then should we keep warm this coming winter without straining the power grid? Now, to discuss this, we are joined in studio by Shane Kilfoil. He is the Managing Director of Global Power Management at Eaton. Shane, a very good morning to you and welcome to AM News. Now, first and foremostly, there is a lot of talk about alternative power, but what sort of alternative power are we talking about?
Well, alternative power comes in many forms, right? So when you take a look at it, it's a broad base. So it goes all the way from PV or solar power that people know it, to wind, to biomass, biogas, and any other number of little alternative energy sectors, niche sectors in there. So when you take a look at alternative energy, it really is a broad spectrum of solutions that really draw on natural resources to generate power as opposed to traditional fossil fuels.
So what does your company Eaton do?
Eaton is a power management company. We're a large multinational. Last year we did about $22.6 billion in sales and in about 175 countries. So we help our customers and their customers manage power effectively in both the electrical, hydraulic and mechanical space. And through our reliable, safe and efficient products, we're able to deliver those solutions to customers. We have about 102,000 employees worldwide, and like I said, we do business in 175 countries.
Now, if you talk about customers, would Eskom then form part and parcel of your customer base?
Yeah, they would.
Now, it is a power struggle, as you know, with the power utility, as domestic consumers are literally in the dark as to what winter holds for them. What are their options as consumers?
Well, first of all, it's tough, right? It's tough for the consumer and tough for business too. And I think, as we've seen, Eskom's already told us, they need to do maintenance and repair on systems to really get that base generating capacity back up. Well, to do that, I think we as a country need to recognize we need to help. It's no longer just an Eskom problem, it's our problem. As a result, we can do, small little things can go a long way. So consumers, if we're trying to avoid the power outages in winter, really need to start taking action now to help Eskom get that maintenance repair done. To do that, what we need to look at is switch off the lights. Hair dryers, don't necessarily use them in the morning. Not a popular decision in my house. All right? Look at also water heaters, air conditioners. Use them when you need to, not all the time. It may seem small and insignificant to you, but when you take a look at it at a national basis, they all add up and help relieve some stress from the grid. It will in turn allow Eskom to do the maintenance and repair.
Now, that is for a consumer. What about small businesses and big businesses? What can they do, and what alternative solutions is open to them to sort of reduce the power outages?
That's a good question. I mean, I think it's one that many businesses, including ourselves, have been asking and will continue to ask as we go through this crisis. Really, when you take a look at it, we've become accustomed to cheap power. We are lucky that for many decades we had cheap power. Over the recent term, their prices increased, and it looks like it's going to continue to increase. But as businesses take a look at it, they need to recognize that there's really two sides to the equation. There's a supply side and there's the demand side. On the supply side, clearly, we want power from Eskom, and we need to figure out ways how to provide powers to the businesses when the power goes out. So some companies are turning to generators. That is a viable alternative, but it gets expensive over the long term. Others are looking at alternative energy, maybe putting rooftop solar units onto their buildings to allow for power generation during the outages. On the demand side, where we don't really focus, that is where I think companies can do a lot more. Energy efficiency and productivity with your energy that you use is very important. And as we take a look at that, that's what we, even as Eaton, are leveraging our global expertise to drive into our own facilities. At Wadeville, for instance, we are in the process of changing out our traditional light bulbs to high-efficient LEDs that we manufacture. These will help reduce our utility bill, but also take demand off the grid. And that's just one example of what companies can do to reduce the burden on the grid.
Alternative decisions or renewable energy for that matter, we talked about solar power, we also talk about wind, but for smaller companies, or companies in general for that matter, it is because there's a lot of talk about the expensive side of renewable energy. Is that a correct assumption?
There is an expensive side to it, so let's maybe take a step back. Those solar panels, the panels themselves used to be a large part of the cost. they've come down dramatically and will continue to do so. So when you take a look at it, it all depends how much you need. What is critical to you? Trying to power your entire building with the air conditioning, heating, etc. that goes with it is probably not practical. But then once you look at your critical requirements, you can right-size a solution to that. The upfront costs, yes, are maybe higher than you would expect, but at the same token, it is also the operating costs are lower. As you take a look today, one of the issues I think that we face is the fact that we really don't it's very hard for a residential user or a small user who wants to put up solar power on his house or on his small business to connect to the grid. Now, why is this important? Well, if you think about it, each one of those solar panels is essentially a power plant, and it's generating power. And when those companies don't need the power, that could be feeding back into the grid.
And you can get some money back in return.
Or tax breaks.
So, how does one do that? Because some say that renewable energy is not getting the sort of kind of credit that it really deserves. Is that correct?
You know, I think some people are saying that, and there's a few reasons around there. But I think, in all fairness, what is renewable energy doing? Currently, we've got about 1,600 megawatts of renewable energy installed. The plan is to get to 10,000 megawatts. That creates jobs. Every one of those stations or renewable energy plants needs jobs that are going to be created for installation, commissioning, and then the continued jobs to maintain them at the energy efficient levels. A recent study by the CSRI on the impact of renewable energies on the South African economy really showed that it has a very positive impact. They estimate about 800 million rand a year in positive effect is attributed to just the 1,600 megawatts of solar power we already have. Imagine when we get to the 10 million, 10 megawatt.
So ultimately, at the end of the day, you need to have an assessment of your power requirements and then take it from there in terms of what you need.
Correct. That's absolutely right. That's where companies such as Eaton come in. We leverage our global expertise in power management. We don't make power, we manage it better. And we leverage that to help companies understand where they can save and how they can also generate and offset the potential loss in power in the coming winter.
And it could be a dual solution. It's not just one solution, is it?
Absolutely. Absolutely. There's many things. It's a combination. Let's be honest. Renewable energy is not the complete answer. It's a combination. Any country looking at a strategic power plan really needs to take a look at all the different generating capacities, whether it be coal, nuclear, or alternative energy.
Now, Finance Minister Nhlanhla Nene did indicate in his budget speech that government departments will play their part in making use of solar power generation, utilizing their rooftops, and we talked about it earlier. Is that maybe the way to go, especially for government, to start the process?
I applaud Minister Nene. I think that's a great initiative showing the government's commitment. But as I said earlier, I think, and I challenge Minister Nene to maybe take this a little further. As we mentioned, an untapped resource is our residential solar or rooftop solar, as you're speaking about. It's very hard legislatively to connect to the grid. And really, if we take a look at that, we have the technology, we have the know-how, and people want to do it. So if Minister Nene can help, maybe we can get some legislation changed, let us feed back onto the grid and take some capacity constraints off Eskom through our own people. And like I said, maybe a tax incentive will help people to invest.
And people will start save.
Exactly.
Your advice for consumers out there and businesses for the way forward, because we know it's going to be another 3 hard years in terms of power generation from Eskom.
Yes. I would say look at your critical needs. Assess what will keep your business running and what is important to you. I, for instance, at my house am installing a UPS that we manufacture, and I've decided which critical lights are important and which electrical outlets are important. No different from any other consumer. I live in this country and I need to plan for it too. Same to his businesses. Decide what is critical for you and take the appropriate steps to install the right solutions that can meet and help alleviate those issues.
If people want to get in touch with your company to come and assess them and look at what they need, where do they get hold of you?
www.eaton.com.
E-A-T-A-N.
E-A-T-O-N.
T-O-N. .co.za.
No.
Mr. Kilfoil?
www.eaton.com.
.com.
Yep.
There you have it. That was Shane Kilfoil, Managing Director of Global Power Management at Eaton. Well, you got to speak to them on their website, of course, www.eaton.com. There you have it. Let's